It's the Pisces new moon on 20 February, and it's the last hurrah for mutable signs before it gets real with Saturn entering Pisces on 7 March. Let's talk about it. Pisces has been a sign. It can sometimes come under the radar and flow under the radar. It's a strange energy. It's not quite tangible always. The thing about the last 2 years, there's been a heavy Pisces activation. We actually had Jupiter there 3 months in 2021, and then in 2022, 2 stints of Jupiter in Pisces, about 2 months at the end of the year and 6 months at the beginning of the year, roughly. And so Jupiter was activating our Pisces sector, this pure, truth-seeking, powerful energy of Pisces, which can not be the easiest energy. It's about revealing reality. And those can be tough pills to swallow, reality pills, but they're ultimately good, in my view, because we are set straight, right, with our vision of what is true. Truth emerges when you activate with Pisces, and that's what Jupiter did until 20 December 2022 when it entered Aries, and now it's in Aries for good, bringing those powers into the more direct action sector of the chart. But this new moon marks the last syzygy in Pisces until 2026 without Saturn there. So it's kind of the final moment, and Venus is in Pisces for this new moon. So it's this final injection of the Piscean without Saturn coming to reform it and recast it in the way that Saturn does, with that serious and heavy tethering that Saturn brings to wherever it is, a kind of a weight that is attached to that energy. And so I've been thinking about this. It's like a party. This is a new moon. It's a party. We can celebrate this newness, right, of reality that was born from Jupiter cleansing this sector and from Venus cleansing this sector for the last 3 weeks. And it feels to me like the party that often you have in the summer before your first year of college. I know for me, I didn't draw a sober breath for months the summer before I went to college. Now I have my own alcoholism issues. I've been sober for a long time. Thank God that is not part of my life anymore, for sure. But it was a very lush summer, and Pisces has this idea, this reputation, Neptune being there now, Venus there during this new moon, that there could be some kind of alcoholic, celebration, druggy celebrations here, these parties that happen before we have to go to college. And in this case, it's before Saturn arrives, where everything gets serious. We might have to be disciplined and more work-oriented and more effort-oriented and more long-term thinking here starting on March 7th in Pisces. So we have this new moon to celebrate and to party. And I want you to consider it, in healthy, safe ways with these kind of partying tactics, to look around and maybe sing or have music or do truth-telling or just be with people. Pisces can be a people sign, an emotional sign, and a sign of hope and acknowledgement of the kind of greater collective beauty that we're immersed in. Within 2 hours of this new moon, Venus leaves Pisces. And so it's also a double, for that reason, the final celebration of this little 3-week period of this power of Venus. It's a send-off before Venus has to go through Mars's domain and get very maybe destabilizing heat that is brought to Venus. You can check out the video I released with this one on Pisces season 2023. I break down Venus and Aries quite extensively in that video. One of the main stories that's been on my mind for the last few weeks or months even is AI. It's AI. It's emerged here with Jupiter and Pisces. Those art AIs were released. Now all of the Aquarius activation with Saturn in Aquarius and Mercury there now, and it's just becoming more and more a part of reality. And to me, it's a perfect metaphor here for Pisces, because Pisces is ungrounded. It's the notion of what is real. Even as we get more into Pisces with Saturn, this sort of search for what is reality. Where are the edges of what can be tangible and what can be known? You might consider that, especially with this moon, when you have Saturn and Mercury joining right there in Aquarius, there's like this doubling up of both Aquarius and Pisces. And there's nothing quite like AI, in my view, to express this doubling up of energy. Aquarian is the new innovation of ideas. Pisces is the feeling, the emotional implications of that, and the creative implications of that. You have this new tool and this new technology, but what does it mean for creativity? I think some are afraid of it. They're saying, oh, this is not creative. Others are like, no, this is a tool. We're going to make masterful works deploying these new technologies. And I think it's resonant with the idea of like electric music in the 1960s. You know, Dylan goes electric around a similar time after some Aquarius and Pisces activation. You know, it's new technologies, new sonic technologies allowed that to happen. It's similar with what we're living through right now. This next news story that I want to bring up here, this story about life imitating art that's been going around here this last week. Very strange when you can have these synchronistic resonances. A film that was released recently called White Noise, it's based on a Don DeLillo novel, talked about an explosion of a chemical train from a train derailment in Ohio. They actually filmed it in this same town where we've just had, sadly, a train derailment with a chemical explosion. There was extras living in, I think it's East Palestine, Ohio, something like this. Extras were living in that town, and they were extras on that film. And then they went back home to the town, and they have the exact same thing that they were acting out in cinema, you know, over the last year when that was being filmed. And so this idea of life imitating art, Pisces can be, I think, the sign of synchronicity, because synchronicity is strange, it's uncertain. We get a sense of what am I living in, what is real, what is fake. Neptune is there now, which can also be that. But Jupiter is like showing us, here's the truth. You know, it's God coming in with these synchronistic messages that aren't always pure Mercury, right? It's not pure analytics. It's like I felt, you know, I saw these three numbers and then I see them over here, but I'm certain that they're connected and there's a meaning behind it. This is all the Piscean search for meaning, and how the Pisces vibe will create meaning is through non-verbal, surreal, poetic turns in how to grapple with reality. And this story is very emblematic of that in my view. You know, I want to say again, we get this Venus and Aries wake-up call. It's like the hot water water getting splashed on us, and let's go, 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 go. There's a rush there with Venus and Aries. That happens 2 hours after the dreamlike nature here in Pisces. So keep that in mind as you are enjoying this moment, 20 February, new moon, in Pisces, final syzygy without Saturn in Pisces until 2026. The second theme of this new moon to me is Saturn and Mercury being together, just like I had mentioned. And it's a time to acknowledge those transformations. This new moon is a peak of energy. All syzygies are. They're an exclamation moment. The new moon is the birth, the full moon is the culmination, but they're both points of accentuation of the reality. You know, I keep saying it, I've said it over and over again, I've said it in this other video I just released. This is the time to acknowledge the Aquarian innovation that we've implemented in our lives since March 2020. And I'm just going to come back to, you know, Mercury is the planet of being able to deploy this kind of magical act of will into the reality. It's the magician card in the tarot. We bring power down from the heavens and then make things with our mercurial component. And with both Aquarius peak activation in this new moon chart, and then you have Venus and the moon and the sun in Pisces, I do think there's something like tears of joy that might be emergent here. Tears of appreciation and joy. I mean, we're alive. I mean, for one, we are living. And it's like, wow, that is such a joyous fact alone. But two, we've seen what we've seen, these kind of wild turns, and life trudges on, and we are part of that. Everyone out there is part of that. That's joy-inducing in some ways. And so I think this combination of Aquarius and Venus can be appreciating the new that's been, you know, foisted upon us, and letting us emotionally respond to it, creatively respond to it through that Piscean surrealism. This chart very much has like the real and the technical and the clear technical, and then it has the surreal expression combined here. And that's why I think these stories like AI, again, is this perfect example, because you have this technical innovation, but then it creates this surrealism, and it's this flowing into the new structure and then grappling with the fact and the reality of the new structure and the reverberations and ramifications in terms of everything in our lives, relationships, who we even are, how we feel, how we perceive. Aquarius to Pisces. You know, I do feel like with Saturn, the ruler of Aquarius, now in Pisces here in 2 weeks, there is a thing with art. And I am going to encourage artists to deploy the new tools. I mean, don't run from it. I've seen great art where the artist has an idea, they use the tool, and they make the art that only a human being can make. AI was involved in some of it, but AI couldn't have done it. The human ingenuity and the human creative spirit is what used the tool of AI to celebrate life. That's what good art is. It's an expression of the soul, the human soul. AI will never do that. Only humans can do it. But the tool of AI will allow for all kinds of new creative ways to express the human soul through this technological innovation. That's how I'm seeing Aquarius into Pisces and Saturn in Pisces. This chart is those dual active, again, activating both signs. The new moon is in Pisces. So the next major thing I want to bring up is the power of the current moment of time, the current quality of time, where we have these beautiful sextiles and trines between Jupiter in Aries, Mars in Gemini, that sextile with Mars ruling Jupiter by domicile. But you also have sextiles in this chart between Jupiter in Aries, Saturn in Aquarius, and Mercury in Aquarius. And so this chart is very much emblematic of this major theme of action and outer world maneuvering that we've enjoyed for the last few weeks. I do think this could be a lovely chart to do some new moon rituals around action and power and movement. The force of what you want to bring into the reality can be quite supported here in this chart of the syzygy. Remember, it's April when eclipse season arrives, 20 April, the first eclipse in Aries. Mercury stations retrograde later after that first eclipse, I believe even the day after. And so from now, this is February 16th until April. That's 2 months. We have 2 more months of this opening, of this movement, of this active astrology. And you can think about this new moon as kickstarting your year again. Get it going again with some new revamping or replanning what you've intended to do. I know for me, I had all this stuff and I've gotten a lot done. It's been good, but it's always good to have an opportunity to recollect and then redeploy. And so I think you can see this syzygy, this new moon in Pisces, as a way to do that. It has support in that regard. Jupiter in Aries is the domicile lord of the syzygy. Bold action, right? Expanding the action, expanding, it's astrology 101 keywords. Bringing truth and awareness and beneficent things to the determination and the movement that we're engaging in our lives. Strong heart, clear mind, that's Mars and Gemini. It's the mind and the thoughts, now that Mars is moving forward, cohering around an idea that we can then maneuver from and with. It's a Piscean activation. Think about the movie Inception, where they're using the dream state to rearrange motivation to bring results in the outer world. There may be something here in this new moon ritual moment where it's more surrealism and dreamlike, but that somehow through that the intentions will then manifest in the outer world. You may want to get Piscean, trippy, nonverbal even, and just the dancing or the movement, something like this, to feel into a vibe or an intention. Visualization, creative visualization would be that key word. And I think the Pisces can support, even though that sign Pisces where the new moon is averse to Aquarius and averse to Aries. Pisces does make the square to Mars and Gemini. And so that is a push energy. It's an energy of tension that can push us forward. So there may be something with how the dream states can operate somewhat independent of Jupiter and Saturn, but that can push the Mars ahead a little bit here in a sort of dynamism. I like that there's the aversions because we can retain the inner life in this kind of dream state while those sextiles and trines from active so-called masculine signs are operating. This waxing phase of the lunation, amazing. These are really cool elections. There's in particular one amazing election, especially for cardinal signs. If you can get this in one of the cardinal signs in your chart that is seen by the ascendant. Here's the elections I'm going to give you for the next 2 weeks. And they're built upon the Mars and Gemini, Jupiter and Aries exchange, and those are encapsulated here in these elections. The first one is going to be 22nd February, and it's also the final period with Saturn and Aquarius. So if you want to capture this Aquarian power, these are charts that you can do that with Saturn there and Mercury there. But the first one is 22nd February. It is a moon that is in Aries, and that moon will be with Jupiter and Venus. It gets enclosed between Jupiter and Venus for a lot of that time. 6 of the 7 traditionals will be in these day-sect masculine outward-oriented signs in this chart. Mars and Gemini receives the moon in both benefics. Mars by this time is not in its Egyptian term yet, or the terms where it's powerful, but it's in its own decan. Maybe there's something there. Mars makes a really close trine to Mercury. Though Mars doesn't have a lot of dignity in this chart, it receives the Aries placements, and then it itself is received by its domicile lord, very powerful in Aquarius with triplicity rulership there. So I think the chain of rulership here actually is quite nice. You can capture those trines and sextiles that I was just referring to in these elections. And so there's a flow of dignity that can support this moon. These are action-based moves that these kind of charts support. It's doing things and getting things built and launching. I mean, you could use charts like this to launch businesses. Mercury is in Aquarius. It has dignity. And then the next to these elections, maybe my favorite of the bunch, is when the moon comes to Cancer on 1-2 March, depending where you are. But if you get it applying to that conjunction of Jupiter and Venus and Aries, this is such a powerful chart. The moon is not making any aspects here to Mars or Saturn at all. And the moon is received by its exaltation lord Jupiter from Aries. This is like peak cardinal activation where you can have a new home, kind of a new structure of support in the whole reality with that Cancer activation. But again, both of these are waxing moons, so it's doing things that you want to grow. That's captured in the symbolism of this chart. And you can get this enclosed between benefics very close here. It's a lot shorter space of time, but just get it applying to Venus. After it trines the sun, get it applying to Venus or Jupiter and get the moon in a good house or on an angle, and you'll have captured here some of the best energy in terms of the elections that are left this year. Before Mars enters Cancer, the next waxing phase, Mars will have entered Cancer by the time the moon comes to Cancer. So this is kind of the last option. If you want to use these powerful cardinal activations with this Cancer moon and with it waxing without Mars getting into the mix. The next waxing phase will have its own options and its own things to pick from. But again, so there's some elections for you, 2 charts you might want to lean into, 2 lovely moons that I'm really liking for this next pocket of time before that full moon in Virgo that arrives on 7 March. And I'll be breaking it down. Thanks for being here. Great to see you. If you want to see more from me, you can click here on one of these videos. If you are interested in astrology reading from me, you can go to my website, sjanderson144.com. Find out everything there about my schedule and the style of readings that I offer. And I'll talk to you soon. Have a great one. Peace.